Hello everyone, and welcome to this public workshop on the TYNDP 2024 CBA implementation guideline. I am Franck Dewagum, and so a member of the drafting team CBA, the team in charge of drafting the cost benefits analysis methodologies, as well as the implementation guideline for which we are having the workshop today. So very happy to have you all there. I see that we are already 60. So that's great. Hopefully we get to help you in the process of your project submission also with this workshop. So yes, this is what the agenda would look like today. So first of all, a quick introduction by myself on, let's say, the cost benefits analysis guideline and the TYNDP process also. And then will be presented by Niels, the main changes since the TYNDP 2022 CBA implementation guideline. Then by our colleague also Philip Fortenbacher, the SU methodology for which incorporates the electricity and hydrogen sector. And this will then also be followed by another indicator, which is it's a major improvement also from the previous cycle, which is the B81 indicator, presenting the security of supply in terms of frequency stability. This will be followed by a presentation by Belen on the European target indicators and how they have been incorporated in the current version of the TYNDP specific implementation guideline. And then Niels will go over the hybrid projects methodology, as well as a sanity check, which has been also improved. And he will continue with the assessment of commissioning year, commissioning years. Sorry. And yeah, unfortunately, Diana Popovic was not able to join today, so I will quickly also present her topic, which was on the climate adaptation measures, basically. And in principle, we shouldn't last until more than 10:45. I hope we finish already before, so that we can give you also more time for some question and answer if you have something already for the moment. I hope this agenda is fine for everyone. So maybe without further ado, we could jump into the overview on the CBA guideline and the TYNDP implementation. TYNDP
maybe
process.
Just one comment for clarification or a proposal from my side as we are going through the topics topic by topic. So I would ask you to already ask questions in the end of each of the topics when you have something. Because from the agenda we have denoted in the end a question and answer topic, but this will of course be kept. But if you have topic related questions already when we are presenting them, please feel free to ask them already then.
Sure. Thank you, Niels. So so yes, as a quick reminder, overview on the TYNDP process as a whole. So as many of you may know already, the TYNDP process is a 2-year process, mainly separated in four main steps, basically, where first of all we have the scenarios themselves, where plausible features are basically being defined based on national developments, but also based on targets from the European side in terms of greenhouse gases emission, but also yes, a neutrality of CO2, for instance, in 2050. From those definition of those scenarios are run, a process of identification of system need is being run basically in each cycle. So the previous identification of system needs, basically the one of 2022, feed into the 2024 process. Therefore, where project promoters can basically submit project and also kind of identify the needs that they are solving also. So yes, basically after that identification of system needs comes the project collection, which is actually the current phase in which we are basically. The submission platform is open, and I guess many of you here in this workshop are aware of that, and therefore yes, this collection is open, and and projects basically submitted by project promoters hopefully solves the needs that have been identified in the previous cycles. And in this cycle, the identification needs will fit into next process, also project collection, of course. And from that project collection, basically is it's assessed, it's made basically a cost benefits analysis, also, which is the topic of today, which is basically based on the CBA guideline that we write on the one side, and the implementation guideline, which we write on the other side. So those two documents are, let's say, complementing each other, should not be seen separately, because basically, let's say the whole cost benefit analysis part is based on all the information provided within those two documents, basically. And of course, the output of the cost benefit analysis part feeds into the PCI PMI process of the European Commission, which of course is a non-negligible process, giving the potential as let's say help that can come from it, basically. And yes, to give a little bit of background on the CBA analysis guideline itself. So of course, from a regulatory point of view, we have some requirements. In Article 11.1 of the TYNDP regulation, it's written that the ENTSO for electricity, and of course also the ENTSO for gas, shall draft consistent single sector draft methodologies, including the energy network and market models, for harmonized system-wide cost benefits analysis at union level for projects on the union list falling under infrastructure categories, which are, let's say, outlined here. And the methodologies referred to in the first subparagraph of this paragraph shall be applied for the preparation of each subsequent union-wide 10-year network development plans developed by the ENTSO for electricity pursuing Article 30 of the Regulation 2019 943. So yes, this CBA guideline basically aims at providing methodology that complies with the requirement of the TYNDP regulation, all basically outlined also in Annex 5 of that TYNDP regulation, and should last over the cycles, basically. And as the CBA guideline itself has to be, let's say, independent from the tools and the data set and the people required for the application of this methodology, here comes the need also for an implementation guideline, which is therefore the document basically providing those extra information on which are specific to each TYNDP cycles, basically. So it defines what are the data set, what are the tools, what are the let's say the people, because some indicators could also be computed internally by project promoters. On the other hand, I mean, we could also, let's say, get some infeed from the project promoters themselves, and therefore a good part of that are defined also in the implementation guideline, and also how to apply the CBA guideline itself, which is the requirements from the TYNDP regulation, are very often specified also in the implementation guidelines, basically. And therefore, yes, just as a reminder, let's say from an informative point of view, and for your convenience, of course, this is the current timeline of the TYNDP process itself. So of course, we had the development of scenarios, and actually, yeah, the input data for scenarios were consulted over the summer, as many of you may know, and currently, as I said before, we are in the, let's say, in the period of the collection of those projects. So the submission platform, as a reminder, is still open until the 16th of October, if I don't make a mistake. And yeah, afterwards will come the cost benefits analysis, which is, let's say, the last part of the TYNDP process itself. And yes, everything together should be released hopefully by next summer, public consultation in July 2024. And afterwards we will have, yes, a submission to ACER for opinion in October 2024, 3 months after the publication for public consultation. And yes, let's say we'll have after after that in quarter 2 of 2025, final publication of the TYNDP package itself, basically. So Yes, I think yeah, this was more informative on the general aspects, of course, of the CBA guideline TYNDP itself, which I think most of you should be aware of. And yeah, maybe we could jump straight into the topic itself at hand today, which is the implementation guideline. And therefore, I will give the floor to Niels to present some main changes in the since the TYNDP 2022 implementation guideline.
Before I jump into this topic, I would like to say a word on the slide before, because there's something I would like to mention, as I see this as very important, as we receive always comments during public consultations that are based on scenarios and also on a more fundamental basis of the whole process chain. And what we are talking about now is the translation from the CBA guideline itself to the implementation guideline for the TYNDP, which means we are focusing mainly here on methodological points. And this is also what we would like to ask in general in this consultation, to give feedback on methodological points and not so much on scenario-dependent parameters and definitions, because that is always something that we receive a lot, but this is not in this process. This is a different process in the TYNDP construction phase, which took place way longer ago, which because it's the first step, obviously, of the TYNDP, and should have been taking place already more than 1 year ago. And another point that I would like to mention is that any major changes in the methodologies that you propose here, with any comments you give in the consultation, will most probably not be included in this TYNDP, but we will keep this information for the next cycle of the TYNDP. This is just because we are in the middle of the process of preparing the TYNDP and the respective teams for preparing the models. And yeah, for running the TYNDP assessment phase is already ongoing, and they need to organize themselves. And this process has already started in the beginning of this year, and therefore we are not able to include big changes in the methodology. We are trying, of course, to include as much as possible, but just to be aware that when you say market simulation should now be made flow-based, just as an example, then this is definitively something that we cannot do in this TYNDP, but we will get this information and keep this in mind for the next cycle of the TYNDP. That just as general comments on how we are dealing with the comments receiving from the public. And if on this general part there is no further question, I saw that there was a question on the recording of this workshop. Frank, maybe you can say something about where this will be made available, or?
Yes, at least yeah, for the moment I recorded it, and yeah, I think we can also make it, let's say, available on YouTube also. We could arrange internally and yes, make it available for you without no problem.
So then in this case, be aware that this session here is recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, then you just need to ask questions on the chat. I guess this will not be recorded.
No.
Okay, good. So then let's jump into the topic discussion a little bit. I would like to give an overview about the main changes of the implementation guideline from TYNDP 2022 to TYNDP 2024, which we are preparing right now. And I would like to highlight just some of the main changes, because all of the major minor changes like error corrections, consistency changes and checks, and additional explanation that we included for clarification are not explicitly listed here, because this is something that we are constantly working on to trying to improve the implementation guideline, but also the CBA guideline itself. But for the implementation guideline for TYNDP 2024, we have worked on the security of supply indicators. As you will see below, there is some change in the indicator itself, but also we have added a security of supply loop beforehand of the CBA phase, which was part already of the scenario building. And this is also described in this implementation guideline, because that was basically one part of the B6 indicator. Yeah, of the B6 indicator. As the first step of this B6 indicator, but this is in this TYNDP not any longer necessary because it has been included already in the scenario building. This security of supply loop is simply to make sure that the scenarios have a realistic level of adequacy in terms of loss of load expectations. So this loop is already included, and we have added this to the implementation guideline, which is kind of a change from the TYNDP 22. Then we have included a generalized way of the formulation of the socioeconomic welfare, and have added also more examples, more details, and an example on how to treat this global SU. And Philip will give later on more in-depth information about this. Then we have deleted the section of the interlinkage between the electricity and the gas sectors. This is directly linked to what I just said on the socioeconomic welfare and the global SU, because this interlinkage between the electricity and the gas sector, the section that we in the past is now included already in this global description of the socioeconomic welfare. So that was just a rework of information in the implementation guideline. Then we have added clarifications on how to use the point in times, if they are to be used. And we have given a clear definition of the usage of the point in times as well. And given the need that, included the need that when point in times are being used, how they have been incorporated and used in the studies. Then we give an inclusion of a clear definition. Oh no, that was inclusion of the methodology on how to assess the commissioning years. This is also some topic that I will give information in a few slides. And inclusion of the methodology of the B81 indicator, which is one of the security of supply indicators. Here we have developed a new methodology, or we have improved the methodology and the ideas that we have already drafted in earlier versions. And now we have a concrete methodology which was based on the project level indicators from the last TYNDP. There, one project promoter had practical way of assessing this indicator, and this was in line with the studies that were already ongoing in other teams at ENTSO-E level. So therefore we took this and included this as an indicator in the implementation guideline, but here we will also give additional information in this workshop today. Then we have deleted the specific section on the B82 indicator, because it turned out that the information that we were giving in the past implementation guideline were not successive, and additional information would have been needed, but we are still struggling here with a unified description of this indicator on a pan-European level. So therefore we have changed this, and but we keep this as a project level indicator for this cycle of the TYNDP. Then we have the inclusion of the methodologies to assess the European targets. We will also give additional information on this. And we have actually updated the list of simulation tools. That is just as an information. You can find it in the implementation guideline itself. And the PMDB generator categories have also been updated by one specific type that you see here. So that's basically what we have included as main changes. Again, I would like to draw attention that any error corrections and consistency changes and additional text that we've included, and also maybe some rearrangement of the sections, is not mentioned here in this presentation explicitly. So if there is no question. If you have questions, then please raise your hand using the tool here or just leave a comment in the chat. And we can unmute you or try to answer the question directly in the chat. If not, then I would like to go on with the next slide. And the first topic, which is the socioeconomic welfare methodology, where I would like to ask Philip to take over the lead here.
Yes, thank you very much, Niels. So here I would like to show you what we have done for this U, because at the end, people now might ask why we do this. Why do we extend this U? But I mean, this is basically for two reasons. First of all, the 10E regulation forces us to do it. So we need to come up with a approach to capture basically the mutual influences between the sectors. So this is for the first reason. And the second one is that we basically need to also come up with an approach when it comes to integrated modeling. This means if we want to combine electricity, hydrogen, maybe in future also CH4, then we need to come up with a, let's say, a universal, straightforward, and also comprehensive approach to deal with these kind of requirements. Here on this slide, I just want to make you an example. What does it mean, sectorial market coupling? So just take the pointer here. That's maybe better. Now I think you can see my pointer. So here you see basically two market clearing diagrams. The left one is for the electricity. The right one is for the hydrogen. And in each market, we have the traditional consumer, or let's start with that. So we have in each market, we have demand curves and supply curves. And if we basically match demand and supply, we get a market clearing price, right? So also in standard classical market theory, we can come up with consumer rents, producer rents. You see that with the gray shaded areas, and we can do that basically also for the hydrogen sector as well. So now if we couple these two markets, for instance, with electrolyzer, we introduce a coupling between these two markets, right? And then we basically obtain a new component, which we call cross-sector rents. And these are basically the orange rectangular areas. And they basically appear in both markets. So we have, first of all, on the electricity side, we have the consumer rent that basically now is created by this new component, and we also have the producer rent on the hydrogen side. Basically, these two components form up the cross-sector rent, which is then also calculated in the implementation in the TYNDP. But before that, I'm gonna show here what we want to do is to capture the global SU, and so this is basically just the sum of all these rents in the electricity and also in the hydrogen sector, and this allows us to have to capture the whole benefit, the total benefit. So we don't have any missing benefits if we do so. And then it also doesn't matter where the benefit comes from. So as long as we have captured the total benefit, then then we are safe, right? Then we don't have any missing benefits. And this is basically the concept of the global SU, that we just combine both markets and form a global SU. And this also allows us then also to compare projects between different sectors. So meaning you can also then compare transmission line project with a gas pipeline or hydrogen gas pipeline in the same indicator space or the dimension. which is then also going towards a common indicator for gas and for hydrogen and electricity in this case. Okay, so what is the cross-sector rent? So we introduce this as a new welfare component. It's, as I already mentioned, it's here in this illustrative example, the arranged rectangles, and it's basically mathematically the same as the cross-sector rent. Sorry, the congestion rent. But here we have the sector coupling, so we couple here markets, and whereas with the congestion rent we couple market in space, and here we would basically couple markets in a sectoral way. So that's the only difference, and that's why also the cross-sector rent is then dependent on the price difference between these markets. So you see here, this is the formulation, the equation for the cross-sector rent between electricity and hydrogen. So it's basically dependent on the price difference between the hydrogen and the electricity sector, and then also the power that is being converted from electricity. In this case, if we have no electrolyzer, it could also be the way other around if we have a hydrogen gas turbine. So, but for the electrolyzer, it would be the price difference between the hydrogen and the electricity sector times the power that is being used for conversion from electricity to hydrogen. And so we don't have here any double counting, since these contributions will only appear in the cross-sector rent. So they will only, so we attribute these for these sector coupling technologies, we only attribute this in the cross-sector rent. So they will not appear in the consumer or in the producer surplus. So that's the main takeaway here, that we don't have any double counting for by doing so. Okay, so I have also a practical example how to calculate now the global SU. But before that, I would like to show you how
Philip,
yeah.
We have some questions in the chat. Maybe you can have a look at the questions. I think the first one is just a question on if you can provide it. Not necessarily needs to be done now, but then we have some concrete questions.
So the concrete question is the hydrogen modeled in the same detail as electricity, such that it are calculated in the detail? So in the end, the hydrogen is same treated as the electricity model, right? We have, if I go back, maybe, sorry. Oh, I can also show that here. So we basically treat the hydrogen modeling part in the same way as we have the electricity model. So we have we could have an NTC model on the hydrogen model. We could have imports, like import terminals, and we also have demands on the hydrogen side. So, and we also have then sector coupling technologies, which is here electrolyzer, but it could also be hydrogen gas turbine. So we basically model it in the same way as as the electricity sector. The second one is, hello, all projects included are for market only or full market and network CBA, depending on the commission. What does it mean really? So maybe we can so we do a market CBA and also a network CBA. So we are doing both. Maybe Niels, you can also comment on the commissioning year, but the commissioning year will also come in later on in the presentation, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then we can have that later on.
And the one question: if the promoter already completed all the information for the TYNDP 2022, does it need to have all its indicators recalculated? We are talking about the TYNDP 24 now, and for this, new calculations will be performed.
Yeah, and there's also another one.
Basically, yes, all information needs to be provided to the TYNDP 24 again, but of course we take the information from the TYNDP 22 as a basis, and we are currently running until end of next week the project submission window. As a project promoter, you should have been informed about that, and their updates can be included. But basically, the models are set up as they are at ENTSO-E level, and therefore the simulation will run through it with this information of the two sectors.
Yeah, there's also another one from Simon. Please provide definition of all the terms and the link to the reference to Felling. So we have these. The definitions are all in the implementation guideline. So I just have now shown the cross sector rent, but you will find all the terms in the document. And also, what is the reference for H2 pricing? So we basically have a steam methane reforming for the bottom-up scenarios, and there it's basically set defined with the CH4 price, and then you need to incorporate also the efficiency to come up with the H2 price. For the top-down scenarios, we are not already sure what we're going to do, but it will then be the import price for the H2, for H2. Okay, maybe then I will move on here. So
I think one more question came up just while we were answering the last one. It's on the electrolyzer and the network model.
Yeah, these models are different, right? So we just have a market model, which is basically the NTC model, where we do the market, the market CBA, and then we basically we map these results to a network model, and then we do also a network CBA, meaning we calculate losses and so on. So these are basically two parts, right? Yep. Correct me if I'm wrong, Niels.
No, that's yeah. So then I would like to ask you to go on with the slides then.
Okay, cool. So to understand the example that I will now show in the next slide, just like to give you a background on price formation in markets. So because you need to understand the concept of price formation to understand the example. So just here, one market node has a load of 5 megawatt as an example, and we have 2 generators that have a certain price and a certain capacity limit of 2 and 10. So if we want to determine the price of this market node, of course, it is obvious it will be 50. So I just want to show you how so we basically would dispatch that with 2M. So we basically use the full capacity of the most cheapest generator, and then we take the next one, which is then 3 megawatts, and then we will have the price. And this is basically formed up by the most expensive generator in that the last expensive generator in that market. So at the end, the price is just the cost of providing an additional megawatt hour in that market zone. Yeah. So, and maybe also worthwhile to know. So these prices are basically an outcome of the market simulation. So we do an economic dispatch, and they basically represent the variables, the dual variables in the economic dispatch optimization. So now, if we now couple 2 markets, then the situation could be different, right? So now we have two markets, and now you see that the price will drop to 40. Why is this? So we have here another market area that has a cheaper generation, which has a capacity of 10, and it would basically dispatch then 8 megawatt, and would be then export 3 megawatt to the other zone. And so here we see that we have price convergence, right? Because now we have two market zones that have 40 euros per megawatt hour. And this is then basically the concept, how we determine the prices in the system. So now you can also think of larger systems, and then it will be really complex, because this would, for this reason, we just have two market nodes to show show you the concept how this works. So now I will move on to the sectorial coupling. So here in this illustrative example, we just show how this is going to work under a multi-sectorial setup. So we have here basically two countries, B and A, and each country has a hydrogen sector or hydrogen market and a hydrogen and electricity market. And these are basically coupled with an electrolyzer that has a capacity of 5 gigawatt in this example and an efficiency of 0.5. So in B, we have also generation, which is 30 gigawatt capacity at a certain price. And then we have an interconnector that basically interconnects A with B, which is has a maximum transmission capacity of 3 gigawatt. And then we have on A, we have the same setup. So we have here a bit, so the A would be a bit more renewable. So we have here 25 giga at €1, and we have a more expensive one, 10 gigawatt at 50 euro megawatt hour. And then we also have a hydrogen pipeline, which has here in this case infinite capacity. And we have also here imports for hydrogen. So it's just a fictive example for 80 euro per megawatt hour. So to come up with a dispatch, each node has to be balanced, right? So we can also see that under the generation cost approach. So under this economic dispatch, we would need to find the most, let's say, the optimal solution in terms of cost, right? So this means we need to minimize the cost. You see that this solution would be then just to dispatch this unit with 13 megawatt, sorry, 13 gigawatt. This would then also export then 3 to A, and we would here have 25. So we would utilize the full renewable potential of 25, and then it would also something go to from electricity to hydrogen. So we would dispatch the electrolyzers with 8 and 5. So now this comes, if we now add everything up, we get basically 300. This would cost me for this certain time step. The system cost would to provide every load in the system would cost me 300. Yeah. So now let's have a look on price formation. So you're gonna see that in B we have 15. Where does the 15 comes from? So the 15 is just here. It's the most the last expensive generator, so it's 15, and it will basically dispatch by 13. So we have 5 goes to the electrolyzer, and 5 will be used for supply the load, and 3 will go to the to country A. And then here we have a special example that you now see. It's a very special case that now we have the price formation in A is 40. So this we can explain by, so if we now so as a reminder, the price is the cost of delivering or to supply an additional megawatt hour in that node. So this is basically then now you can say, okay, let's take the 50, and because this is the most expensive generator, but you can also relieve the electrolyzer by 1, and then you would basically need to to balance out A in terms of hydrogen with 0.5 megawatt hour in hydrogen, and this 0.5 megawatt hour times the 80 would cost me 40 instead of 50. So this would be a cheaper option just to release the electrolyzer instead of using the more expensive unit of 50. And here, this is a really nice example where we're going to see that the electrolyzer is not price taking anymore. So it's now really price setting in the electricity sector. And this also means now here that the hydrogen sector is setting the price in the electricity sector, which is a quite nice example that you can see here, that coupling elements could really influence the price, also on the electricity side. Okay, so if we now go further, so we can now make up the calculations for all the rents that I have presented before. So maybe just one. I will not go through all of them. So, but here for the cross sector rent, maybe it would be worthwhile. So we have here so the electrolyzer is dispatched by 5 gigawatt on the electricity side. So we basically have here the 15 euros times the 5, and we have the 80 euros times the 2.5, which would be 2.5 would be the output of the electrolyzer. And this would give you the cross sector rent for the country B, and we have the same on country A. Here we have 8 gigawatt. This would be then so output of 4 on hydrogen side, because we have here the efficiency. So so this would be then the price. As I told you before, it's a price difference. So it's 80 times 4 minus the price of in A, 40 times 8. So we'll come up to 125. Yeah, and we can basically go through all of these sector rents, all of the rents, and then we come up with a global SU of 2,950. So now, if we have a project that is now being assessed, we always do that in an incremental way. So we just pinned. Well, pinned means that we put in one project at a time, and this means we would now increase the capacity, the transmission line between on the electricity side between B and A to 5. So which means we have a total capacity of 8 gigawatt. So now we can allow basically more dispatch for the cheaper unit, and then you also see that this will be then also go up. So instead of 13 gigawatt, we would dispatch that unit with 15. And then this also will be that you see that now we have more flow on the line. So now we have and then we also have price convergence in the electricity sector. Yeah, and then we only can have 10 gigawatt. So this is the capacity limit of the electrolyzer. So we can only convert electricity to hydrogen with 10. So meaning then we can 5 deliver here, but then we don't need to import any hydrogen in the system. So then we have a different price scheme, right? So this is now changed to 15 because we have added a new line, and we can do the same calculation here as well. And so then you see that in total, the SKU increases by to 3,000. And if we take the difference, then you see that this project has a total benefit of 50, right? If we just now check this with the generation cost approach, you see that will yield the same result. Because in theory, both approaches should yield the same result. And you can really see that in this example, that the SKU and the delta SKU is basically which is nothing more as the project benefit is the same. So this is just a very small toy example, and you can really see that this is really now with a 4-node system, it's already getting complicated. But now you could also now really check this step by step, and you can also check that in the document, and you can basically also try to do it step by step and check if this is that these approaches are yielding the same result. Okay, so this was the illustrative example under multi-sectorial coupling. Before I move on with the B81, are there any questions on this?
One question was just raised, Philip. I think just the last one, basically.
What are we conceptually missing if we do not include the cross-sector rents in this SKU? I mean, then you would, I mean, you could either use the traditional one where you just attribute that to producer and producer rents, and also in consumer rents, but it gets really difficult if we have an integrated model. That's why the cross-sector rent will give you here the right answers. Especially if it gets really integrated, then there's no other way to calculate it. Okay, are there any other questions regarding? No, I don't see anyone. So then I will, yeah, okay. So then I just will move on to the next topic, which is B81 indicator. So B81 is the stability indicator, and we try to, we try to come up with stability by using Rockhoff. So Rockhoff is rate of change of frequency. We have here foreseen a new method to basically to evaluate the benefit of stability in the system, and this is mainly accomplished by if we introduce HVDC projects in the system. So here. So here as a very as an example, we basically have two areas that are so these are basically in a synchronous area, and if we have a split of these two areas, then this 4 gigawatt could not really flow again, right? So we will then have an imbalance of 4 gigawatt, and this imbalance of these two areas, they will determine the Rockhoff. Here you see the equation for the Rockhoff. So the imbalance, the greater the imbalance, the higher the Rockhoff will be. And if we have a project that reduces this imbalance between these two areas, then we can reduce the Rockhoff, which is then better in terms of stability. That's why we basically use the Rokov to measure or to measure the that gives us a proxy for the stability, right? So here in this equation, okay, now let's look on the reference case. So this could be a market simulation where we have an NTC capacity of 5 gigawatt, and the market simulation will determine 4 gigawatt will flow from area A to area B, right? So if we now have a split, then this 4 gigawatt cannot really flow. So then we have an imbalance of 4 gigawatt. So now if we introduce a new project, which is a DC project, which is quite important because this DC project can now take 1 gigawatt of these 4, meaning that we can reduce the imbalance to 3 gigawatt. And this means that this project could then reduce the Rokov. And that's basically the fundamental concept behind this this methodology, that we just measure the Rokov with the project and without a project. Here you see that we need to do that for every time step. So with and without a project, and then we can construct a Rokov duration curve. Here on the right hand, you see an example for a Rokov curve. You see in blue it's the base case, right? And we have in red where the project is in the system. And now what we now foresee is that we just use 2 kind of indicators. So first of all, we want to measure the reduction of Rokov in terms of the mean value. So we take the mean value of the Rokov, and if the project reduces the mean, then we have a stability. We have a better stability target. And what's more crucial here is that we also measure or determine the reduction of critical situations of Rokov. And there is in drafting team planning standards, they came up basically with a, let's say, with a limit where the Rokov when the Rokov is greater than 1 hertz per second, then it is a really critical situation. And this we want to now take out from these to take this information out from the duration curve. So here you're going to see that if we now come up with the we basically count the situations of Rokov that are greater than 1 hertz per second. So here in this example, without a project, we have 1,700 hours where we are above this limit, and where we have basically critical situations. If we have the project, we have less. Okay, so in this sense, we have basically 200 hours less. We have less than 200 hours critical situations with the project. And this is quite and this basically transfers then to better stability performance. And we do that on the same side for the same calculation we do for the case when we have lower than -1 hertz per second. So in total, we would save for this project 450 hours. We would reduce the critical situations. Okay, so this is basically the methodology that we have now foreseen in the implementation guidelines. Are there any questions regarding this?
There's one question, maybe Frank, you can answer this one. I think we have not yet made a plan on this.
Yes, indeed. Regarding the project level indicators, right?
Yep.
Yes, should be beginning of 2024. But indeed, yes, there's no actual date already. Yeah, actually, Julia just responded. So yeah, it's Q1 2024, but no actual date defined already for it. But I guess yeah, more information will come maybe from the from Julia also. Later on. But I think, Philip, we had two other questions, I guess, related to the SEW methodology when you started presenting the B81. So it's one question is there's no established price for H2 import in any hubs, but your calculations are very dependent on H2 price. How will this be resolved?
So this will be the import from the scenario building. So they will come up with prices for hydrogen import and so on. So, and then also dependent on which scenario. So for, I think for GA or global ambition scenarios, or distributed energy scenarios, we have different ones, and then also different ones for different target years. So they will basically come from the scenarios, the prices.
Thank you. And there was another question on from Bombudaski, asking, will there be any benchmarks to achieve in the current methodology? I'm not sure to fully get the question, so maybe if I don't know if you understood it, Philip, but
I don't see I don't see the chat, so but
yeah,
maybe I can.
The question is basically, will there be any benchmarks to achieve in the current methodology? So I guess the SEW methodology, but I'm not sure if it's benchmark on prices or anything. But maybe if Bukarski can just maybe clarify a little bit more in the comment, we could get to that question maybe afterwards.
Yeah.
And there is another question who just came. So in the economic dispatch problems, how are storage projects handled?
So to my understanding, they are just used as a with zero price, and so it's just a flexibility with a zero price. That is my understanding how this is gonna model in the TYNDP. But maybe Niels, you also correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not deeply involved in this modeling purpose. This is something that the TYNDP study team is a different team from the team that was working on the implementation guideline can give answer on.
All right, thank you both. I hope it answered to the questions. Maybe I can take on the slides again, and we are going to talk about the European targets indicators. Maybe just let me go to the next slide then. So Belen, please, the floor is yours on the European targets indicators.
Okay, thank you, Frank. So good morning, everyone. Now it's the turn for talking about the European targets indicators that you may know. These indicators are included in the supplemental methodology section of the CBA guideline. The first one is related to interconnection, the contribution to union targets, to union energy targets, and this could be computed through three different indicators as well. So the first one is the price differentials indicator, is computed per border and is obtained from the market simulations as the yearly average absolute hourly price differentials in the market simulations. And as the expert group on electricity interconnection targets recommendations, when for those borders obtaining a higher value than €2 per megawatt hour means that further interconnection should be urgently investigated in those borders. The second indicator is the security of supply one, is computed by country. And the way to compute this indicator is to divide the nominal transmission capacity by the peak load by 2030 horizon. The nominal transmission capacity, just for you to know, is that it corresponds to the maximum power flow that a cross-border can transmit in accordance with the system security criteria. And here, when this comparison is lower than 30%, means that further interconnections should be urgently investigated in those countries. The third indicator is the renewable energy integration, and is computed again by country, and to account for the contribution of interconnections of renewable energy sources integrations. Here, we have to divide the nominal transmission capacity that I have defined previously by the installed renewable generation capacity by 2030. And again, like whenever this value is below 30%, then it means that for those countries, the further interconnection should be urgently investigated. In the next slide, Frank, if you move on to the next slide. Okay, perfect. So the second European target indicators is related to energy efficiency. This indicator specifies the variation on energy system efficiency influenced by a project, and is computed. The proposal is computed the final energy consumption by the primary energy consumption. The final energy consumptions means the sum of the energy demand of all electric conventional and DSR loads and all the conventional loads of the hydrogen sector. And the primary energy consumption is the yearly energy output coming from thermal, renewable, and units that are coupled with the hydrogen sector. In this case, to compute the primary energy consumption, we need to divide the energy output of the energy output by the energy efficiency of each generator device. And finally, to compute the contribution of a project to this indicator, we have to calculate this indicator with and without the project to final give the contribution of a project to this indicator. In the next slide, okay. In the next slide, we can see the third. The third indicator, the third European target indicator proposed in these guidelines, that is the renewable penetration one, that is calculated as the yearly energy gross consumption divided by the final energy consumption. The final energy consumption is the same as we have previously defined in the slide that we have just commented, and the energy gross consumption is the yearly energy output from renewable generators providing electricity. In this term, it has to be taken into account the hydro, the wind onshore and offshore, the solar photovoltaic, the solar thermal, and others renewable generation. And again, here, as in the previous indicator, to compute the contribution of a project to this indicator, we have to calculate with and without the project to obtain the result from the project point of view. And that's all from European targets indicators information that we wanted to give. So if you have any questions, let me check. I think I cannot see any questions on the chat, if I am not wrong.
Yes, indeed. I don't think we have received any comments on that. Yeah, maybe we can just leave a few seconds if anyone has a question to raise.
Okay.
Okay, well, in any case, yes, if question, please just of course write it in the chat box, and we could take it at any time without any problem. So yes, so to keep yes, just a question now regarding the ET. Should we include the interconnection ratio?
Well, this the first of the indicators, the contribution to European targets. Well, it's a kind of computation of the 15 interconnection ratio that the European Commission recommends to establish by 2030. As you may know, yeah, by 2020 we have the recommendation of this 10% interconnection ratio that should be achieved by all countries. And it was computed, divided the transmission capacity versus the installed capacity of that country. And by 2030, we have this 15 interconnection ratio, but there was no methodology to compute. So for that reason, it was established an expert group. This expert group established a recommendation and to compute that 15%. So more or less, through these three indicators, the price differential, security, supply, renewable energy integrations, whenever they are above, or well, the price differential are below, and the other two above the thresholds established, it means that this 15% ratio will be accomplished. Okay, I think there are another question. Does it make sense to treat variable renewables equal with hydro, which can be pumped hydro, or run of river, which is less uncertain than? Oh, yeah, this is for the moment. I think we have included in the guidelines. We have not included pumped. Maybe I mentioned it wrongly. I mentioned hydro, but I think in the methodology we included run of river, reservoir, but not pumped. Okay. ET1 complements the IR indicator showing the urgency. I do not understand this question. ET1 complements the interconnection ratio indicator showing the urgency. This is the answer, I think.
Yeah, maybe it's a statement.
Yeah, yes. The answer for the whether indicators will be applied, CBA and PCI. Well, these indicators are included as in the supplemental methodologies in the guidelines. And as well, you know, these CBA guidelines are multi-criteria ones to make this project assessment, and of course will be part of the information for projects to give for the European Commission to have information about these projects as well. So at the end, yeah, all this information, some of them, as you know, some of the indicators are monetized, some not, and these are the ones that appear new in this implementation guidelines will give some information for the projects, and also, of course, for the PCI process that, as you know, is the European Commission is the responsible for that process.
So another question here is, what will be the benchmarks again?
I do not understand what will be the benchmarks.
Yeah, maybe what I can try to do is maybe I will I can maybe try to make Buhaski a presenter so that I can maybe share yeah, share maybe by voice if he wishes. His point. So yeah, Mr. Bogaski Vosches, I hope I spelled it well. You can now maybe take on the mic and also ask your question if you wish for more clarification.
Okay, I think there is an okay regarding the consideration in the hydro in the generation. It says grouping hydro with PV and wind is strange, as one creates challenges and the other can help to mitigate. Yeah. Yeah. At the moment, I do not have the rationale behind this, but maybe we can look for it and answer afterwards. But for the moment, we have established in the account for the renewable energy value, we have included it. But yeah, maybe we can look for the rationale behind that. Okay, that I do not have right now. Maybe I just forgot to wait. Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Belen. Okay, maybe another question. As for renewable energy sources, one should consider the equivalent firm capacity instead of installed power. Not sure if it's a comment or a question.
Okay, this is, I think this is for the, I don't know if they are referring for the ET1. Okay, it's just welcome.
It was just a comment.
Yeah, well, firm capacity, I don't know what is the difference, or what are you referring about firm capacity? What does it mean from? Because it install capacity, well, okay, for the ET1, I think this considering the let me check. Yeah, in the installed renewable generation capacity, the renewable energy integration indicator, the third one for the ET1. Yeah, we have this installed generation, but this is an input from these scenarios, and this is what we are considering. So yeah, I think I do not understand exactly what is firm capacity. I understand that this is what maybe a country considers real, but at the end we have to work with the inputs given in the scenarios, and these are information that we should consider real by 2030.
Okay, I think Nuno has a hand raised also. Nuno, if you want to take on the floor, please.
Yes, I think that it's an interesting question related to this disaggregation of renewables. Probably it's the same as we considering is when you calculate the residual load, because when you calculate residual load, we only use variable renewables. Probably no makes sense to use in this case either with storage capabilities or with pumping capabilities. Probably it makes sense to use only runoff river because it's variable. I think we need to look for this indicator and try to think it makes sense to introduce all kind of renewable technologies, because as you know, the for example the hydro with big storage capacities and with pumping capabilities, it's correct to say that it's a firm capacity, and probably no makes sense to introduce in this denominator. But I think you need to think about that, and internally in the drafting team CBA, and after that take some conclusions.
Okay, thanks, Nuno. I think, yeah, it could also a good thing about having this discussion internally, but I think, but yeah, it's something that we have to think about, and but I think our we are reflecting, or at least Now, thinking about it, maybe we are reflecting what it is considering in the European directive regarding this renewable integration principle. So yeah, but it's something that maybe it deserves time for us to discuss inside within the group. Thanks.
Okay, thank you both. So yes, I think we can to save some time, we can maybe move on to the hybrid projects methodology that will be presented by Niels. So please, Niels, the floor is yours.
So basically, I have to say that the methodology for the hybrid projects has not changed too much since the last TYNDP. So in principle, it is the same, but we have changed some of the details. And as this is still nonetheless quite of a new methodology, I would like to give an overview of what we are having here. So first of all, it's important to notice what we understand as a hybrid project. And I can tell you what it is not. It is not anything that is has to do with the interlinkage between the sectors. So this is not what we interpret as a hybrid project. What we interpret as a hybrid project is a project that has both an interconnection together with any facilitating a client connection with a certain technology like rest generation or non-rest generation or load or anything that you can imagine that is going into this direction. So and we have already some examples from the TYNDP 2022 where we were treating those specific projects with the methodology applied there. The one project is the AC project Kriegers Flak, which has already been in the TYNDP earlier on, but has been just assessed with the methodology as defined here during the last TYNDP and will be applied for the next one as well. The other one that also has been assessed using this methodology in TYNDP 2022 is the DC project, which is kind of a interlinkage between several hubs, is the North Sea Wind Power Hub. That is a concrete project in the TYNDP as well. So these are examples for typical hybrid projects, how we interpret hybrid or how we define a hybrid project. What we have done then, or what we see as reasonable in this application of the methodology is to define two different cases. And this, by the way, is one of the changes that we have applied to the methodology. We have just renamed it from option to cases because we want to concretely highlight that this is not an option for the project promoter to decide which methodology or which case to apply. It should be a consequence of the definition of the project. So when a project has been applied for the TYNDP during the submission window, then with the information given for this project, it should be concretely in concrete be defined which case to be applied. And the case number one that we see is if you have a already radial connection in this example, and in all the examples I will just talk about wind interconnection or wind generation here. But this, as said earlier, is also to be applied and applicable for other types of generation and also the loads. So therefore, this is just a generalization here. So if you have a radial wind connection and you would like to add here an additional leg for making this or to combining this radial connection with an additional interconnector, you can do this by just adding a leg from the platform to another country. And this is denoted here in this figure by this dotted line. So basically you have transferred now or transformed this radial connection to a hybrid project because now you have an interconnection between the two countries and still the generation capacity is also there. So this is kind of an update from an already existing project. And the case number two is then if the project promoter plans to build anything from scratch, which means that the generation capacity will be built up together with the project and that the interconnection will also be part of this same project. And in the end, of course, both of the setups as shown here in case number 1 and case number 2 in these examples are exactly the same. One has there's an interconnection between country A and country B, and there's this additional, or there's this wind capacity that is also being linked directly to this interconnection. So the end situation is the same, but as we are performing in the CBA, always a delta comparison between a factual and a counterfactual case. We need to, there are different starting points for this assessment, obviously. And I would like to go on the next slide to give an overview about how we are calculating this in a bit. So not much into details, but also on a higher level, but giving some additional information on this. So basically for the first case, you see here in this small table, project costs, project benefits, and the assessment type. So basically what we have as a project cost here in this case is as it is built up on an already existing radial connection, we just need to consider this additional second leg for this. So all of the costs of this hybrid project will come from this additional interconnection part. And of course, we need to consider also additional offshore substations and stuff that needs to be built up on the seaside here to make this all happen. But basically, there is the first leg from country A to the wind farm is already part of an existing line, so it does not count into the costs, and also the wind farm itself and anything of the generation part that does not be considered in this perspective. The benefits then are basically, yeah, we are calculating now 2 market simulations, one with and one without this addition, and the benefits will then mainly come from this interconnection addition, because beforehand there was no interconnection between the 2 markets, and now there is. So basically all of the benefit will come from this, as the wind generation will not vary in both of the model runs, as these are model parameters that are input for the market simulations coming from the scenarios themselves. So there will not be a change. The only change that might be that the wind can now also be transported to the country B and not just to country A, and this can also have some kind of an impact. But the main impact will come from this additional link between the countries A and B. And important to note here is that for the scenario numbers themselves, so the installed capacities, there is no change in the installed capacities, because the wind farm in this example has already been there, and it is also there in both of the cases, in the reference case and also in the project case. This is different than in the case number 2, where we are adding everything from scratch. So basically the costs that need to be considered is the costs of the interconnection and the costs of the substation of the platforms. What we don't consider here, because we don't want to evaluate the costs of the wind farms due to the unbundling, of course, is that we are not considering the costs of the installation of the wind farm itself. We will then have a consideration of these costs in a second step, but for the simulations, this is not considered in the first place. The benefits then will be considered, of course, the interconnection and also the additional capacity that is added there. And therefore, as there is no free lunch, this generation capacity will need to be built up somewhere when we are putting it on top of the scenarios. And this is what is here in this table mentioned under the assessment type. We have the CBA case 2. We will have additional offshore wind capacity in the scenario itself. And as said, there is no free lunch, so there needs to be some costs of this build up, which society needs to bear. So therefore, we need to make an assumption of the costs, and these assumptions on the costs will be as an approximation. What we have done also in the last TYNDP already is to think about that the producer surplus of the wind farm generator itself can be seen as kind of business case for the project promoter, and therefore this can lie within the range of the actual costs. And the problem here is that we don't have the actual costs of the wind farms, and therefore we need to go with such kind of an assumption. And for radial projects, this can also be applied the same way. While then in this case of the case number 2, only the benefit will come from this additional wind capacity that is being applied. And what we are doing then, as said, we are needing to think about what are the costs of the wind farm, and we are taking the producer surplus as an approximation of these costs. But in the end, these are not exact costs, and it's just a first guess. So therefore, we need to perform a sanity check. And if I might ask you to go to the next slide, I will explain you quickly how the sanity check works, which is basically the same as in the past. So, can you go to the next slide? If not, then yeah, great. So I would like to give you now an overview about the sanity check that we are applying, because as said, the cost is just an assumption, and we need to, or we applied this or included this methodology to the sanity check to get a more robust picture of the costs to be taken for this additional generation capacity. And what we are doing here is giving a step-by-step example. First of all, a standard calculation of the B1 indicator. This is what we are performing in the CBA assessment then, which gives us the socioeconomic welfare. Then we are using this producer surplus as a cost approximation. And this will then be used as an approximation, just as a proxy for the cost of the generation. And what we are then doing is defining a cost range. And we are having two different possibilities to do this. We can give a minimum and a maximum cost based on standard costs. And we can give, if the project promoters is delivering some detailed costs for this wind generation, then we say that it's plus minus 20%. And both the option number A and option number B lies within a reasonable range, so it's comparable to each other. So therefore, this can be used as a range of the costs. And this is what you see in the little figure here on the right-hand side. You see a range of the costs between a minimum and a maximum value. Then we have added here for help a mean value and the line with the PS, which means this could be the this could be the place, the calculated costs by the producer surplus, which will be used as the approximation. So the easiest case is, of course, in the very right-hand side. What we are applying then is if the producer surplus lies within this predefined range, the range that is defined by either the project promoters plus minus 20% or some standard costs where we are defining a minimum and a maximum value. If the the producer surplus is within this range, then we say, okay, the producer surplus was a reasonable approximation for the costs of the generation capacity. And then we will use for the further steps this producer surplus value as the costs for this generation. And then we have, of course, the situation where the producer surplus can be both below or above the range. And the methodology that we are applying here is in both cases the same, but just the sign changes. And if the producer surplus lies below the range, then we are applying, then we would like to, or the idea behind that, what we are doing then is that we would like to keep both informations from the calculated producer surplus and from the cost range by applying generalization of the producer surplus, which brings the producer surplus or the calculated and the used value then closer to the range together. And therefore we are applying the mean value from the range. and applying the mean value between the mean of the range and the producer surplus, and this is then where the star that is in this little figure shown here is applied, and this is then the value that will be used. And this value then will be in the final step be subtracted from the socioeconomic welfare that has been calculated in the first step here on this slide. So basically that is the sanity check. It just helps us to get a feeling about the costs of the generation capacity, which needs then to be considered, as we also considering the benefits of this generation capacity. So that therefore also we need to consider to some extent the costs of this generation capacity, as this comes on top of the scenarios. And I see that there are some questions. The first question, I think it was on an earlier one, but the second one, for case 2, can you confirm that the additional generation will be on top of the target for each scenario, e.g. on top of the GA 2040 capacities, since these will be used as the base case for the CBA? So for option number, not option, for case number 2, this additional generation capacity will come on top of the scenarios. That is for sure. But we are making one distinct difference here, that we are saying that for TUT projects, we are not applying the sanity check, because for TUT projects, which means that the capacity will be there for all of the projects. Let's say in the reference case for the TUT projects, the project will be there, and also the capacity will be there, and therefore for all of the other projects that are being assessed in the TYNDP, this additional capacity will be there. So therefore we don't applying the sanity check just for this project, because that would then be an unfair treatment of that. And the second thing is, if the project and the generation capacity is already within a very certain information from the respective country, if it's in the country targets but not within the scenario itself, then we are also not applying the sanity check, because then we say that the capacity will be built to some extent, and we don't care about how it will be built, but it will be definitely be there in the future, and therefore we don't need to apply the sanity check here as well. But for case 2, it will come on top. If it's a PIN project, then it will become on top of the scenario numbers, and if it's a TUT project, then it is already part of the reference. So for project promoters, what is the NTC calculation criteria for offshore radial projects? Just from offshore turbine point to mainland? For radial project, in principle, I would say yes. So it can be applied the same way as for the case number 2 for radial projects, because without the project, obviously the generation capacity will not be there, because it's connected to nowhere. So therefore it's not connected to anywhere. And therefore this cost assumption and the sanity check can and should also be applied for this type of projects then. So I see that we have just 18 minutes left, so maybe we can go to the next topic.
Yes. So it's you again, Nils.
Basically, anything that we are showing today is also directly part of the implementation guidelines. So if you are still struggling with some questions, then you can have a closer look at this. And if this does not help, then feel also free to contact us via email. I would say is the most efficient way. And then we are trying to answer your questions then. So the next topic will be the assessment of commissioning years. Here I have to say that this is just a rough estimate for the commissioning years. And the idea behind applying or including this methodology in the TYNDP and also in the CBA guideline, and therefore also in the implementation guideline, is to give additional information to start discussions with the project promoters in case that there's a big deviation between the assessment years that have been submitted by the project promoters and the assessment years that have been calculated by using this methodology. And the methodology that you see here is kind of a simple methodology, but by test it has been shown that the results are reasonable, and reasonable in that way that we can detect projects where we have our doubts if this is a reasonable commissioning year that the project promoter has submitted. And then again, we will just contact the project promoter, asking the project promoter to explain themselves why they see the submitted commissioning year as the reasonable one and the correct one. And if this is then within this communication with the project promoter and between ENTSO-E is a good explanation, then we will also say, okay, it is explained by the project promoter why the commissioning year is as it is, and then it will be in the and we will not change any commissioning years in the project sheets. So all of the outcome from this methodology will just be given as an additional information, but the commissioning years will remain unchanged from what the project promoter has submitted. And the methodology, therefore, is just to be seen as a rough estimate. And the commissioning year will be calculated using this simplified formula. We are having a start date, of course, which will be the date of the study. So for the TYNDP 2024, it will be the year 2024. And then we are adding some constant values like the Tx and the Tconst here. While const does not stand for constant, but for construction. So that is kind of a little bit not clear, but I'm saying it to you now, so it should be clear then. So the Tconst stands for the time for the construction of the project, which is dependent on the length, as you see it in the definition below. And the Tx is dependent on what stage the project is in. So we have three different stages that are to be considered here. The one is the T under consideration, which is the phase of under consideration. There we have said that in general this is this takes 8 years until it reaches then the stage of the construction. For the pre-perm, which stands for before the permitting phase, which we have seen as a reasonable value, seems to be the 5 years. And then we have a permitting phase, which we have in the mean value from all of the projects. Because for this time assumption, we assume that the project is already in the permitting phase. And as we say that the permitting phase takes about 5 years in general, and if it's in this permitting phase already, we say in the mean value, it's kind of the half of it, so it's about 2 years. And this is then what is in the formula in the brackets, and we are adjusting these constant values by applying some factors, which are given here, factor number 1 to factor number 4, and factor values are given in this table, which can also be found in the CBA implementation guideline in the annex. And I think I don't want to go into all of the details here, but I just would like to give you an overview about the factors. The first factor is defining complexity of the technology, whether it's AC or DC. The factor number 2 gives the complexity, whether it's an overhead line or a cable or a substation or something like that. And the factor number 3 is given whether it's an onshore or an offshore project. And the factor number 4 is whether it's a new project or an update of an existing line. And the values or the factors where you see the factor defined as number 1 is said that this is the state of the art applications. So for the F1, it's AC seen as the standard, and DC is to be seen as kind of a little bit lasting longer for the construction and permitting phase. And these are the factors. And then I wanted to say which I forgot to say about the construction phase, which we have defined based on the length. So the longer the project, the longer the construction will take. In principle, this is also just an assumption, because there can be, or anything can happen if it's very efficient, and if the project promoter decides to build anything in the same period of time from the starting point of the project to the beginning point of the project, also with a longer project, then this can also be shorter than, for example, here the 4 years for projects that are longer than 500 kilometers. But as said, it's just an assumption and should foster additional information, a discussion with the project promoters, and give information to start these discussions with the project promoters. So one thing to be mentioned here, all of the numbers and values are based on expert knowledge, based on information that we have from the past TYNDPs, where we made some kind of a statistics out of it. But it turned out that in principle, it's not easy to compare projects with each other, because each project is a unique thing and planning. So therefore, it's not easy to come up with some standardized values as we have done it here. So therefore, again, I cannot say it more often enough. It's just to start discussions with the project promoters if there is a deviation between the commissioning years. And the question in the chat is, or the expert method, maybe? I don't know what that question.
Yes, I think it's related to the previous question, which was basically as that, did you consider the current tight supply chain, or is this based on academic estimates? And you just, let's say, answer it in your elaboration by saying that it's based on expert knowledge and some analysis of the previous TYNDPs, basically.
Yeah. In this case, the promoter's assessment doesn't seem to be included in the formula. If you mean by this project promoter's assessment, the information that comes from the project promoters. Yes, yeah, exactly. So this is not included in this formula, because we say we would like to calculate the commissioning year using this methodology, and then comparing the outcome with the value that comes from the project promoter. And if it's in a reasonable range, which is like 2, 3, 4 years, then we say it's okay, because we know that this methodology is not a perfect one. But if it's deviating a lot, then we say, okay, we are contacting the project promoter, asking them, can you please elaborate on why you think that your commissioning date is the more reasonable one? And also here we're just looking for, if the project promoter says for a 1,000 kilometer long DC sub cable, underground cable, that it will be built in 2 years from the under consideration phase, then we say, okay, we have our doubts, but we would like to give the project promoter the chance to explain themselves why they see that the project will come that much faster than as outcome from this methodology. So that's the idea behind that. It's kind of a giving an additional value to start the discussion with the project promoters. And what I've given here, I wanted to show you, but given the time, I will just run very briefly through this. Is an example, but you can also find this in the implementation guidelines. So if you have a project, if you look at the table now, the status is planned but not yet considering, planned but yet not in permitting. We have defined this 5 years. with a length of 500 kilometers, which gives 3 years, and it's a DC project, which gives a factor of 1.1. It's a cable 1.2, and it's an offshore, which makes it a little bit easier because it might be that there is less discussion with impacted people. So therefore it's a 0.9, and it's just an upgrade of the project. Okay, I see it's just a very fictive project. So maybe in this case, the factor number 0.5 is not the proper one. But in this case, in this fictive example, we have just taken this. And you see then how it's been calculated up, and the final date or the year, that because we're not giving the date, but just the year, is then rounded up to the year 2028. And if the project promoter then, for example, has given 2025, which is just 1 year from the TYNDP, then we would go into discussion with the project promoter, asking them why they think that they are that much faster than we assume with this methodology. I have a question here, what the costs are to be considered as OPEX. Basically, for this methodology, no costs has been considered. We were also thinking about considering costs for the assessment of commissioning years, but we found that the costs are defined already by the length of the project and the complexity of the project. So therefore, we are not considering costs in this perspective here. And if you have a general question on the cost terms, then I would like to give you reference to the implementation guideline, and also the CBA guideline, where we have more details on the costs that need to be considered for the projects. And 6 minutes left, so we need to jump to the next topic.
Yes, thank you, Nils. And before maybe jumping to the next topic, I saw this other question on for storage projects. My understanding is that the CBA will be computed by ENTSO-E according to the DG Energy methodology. So yes, for this first part of the question, in principle, yes, we still have a final discussion to have with the European Commission, but in principle, your statement is correct. And what project level indicator studies can storage project promoters submit, and to whom? Yes, this still in principle, this the same project level indicators as the previous one, because from the methodology proposed by the commission, by the Directorate General Energy, it doesn't change much basically from what we had proposed before. So in principle, there should be the same project level indicators, and there still needs to be a final alignment with the European Commission on that. And I think, yes, if you have a specific question regarding those storage projects, please, I think you could refer also, also maybe send an email to the TYNDP project manager, Giulio Lapera, and together with him, we could of course align on that without any problem. And yes, as Niels was saying, we have a last topic. I mean, which is just, let's say, mainly for information also. So we have this requirement also from the TYNDP regulation to define basically also the impact of climate adaptation measures taken by projects, taken by project promoters for projects basically. And here's a little bit the outline of the idea that we currently consider in the drafting team CBA. So of course, yes, transmission. I mean, given the current weather conditions and the future trends that we foresee, transmission system operator, in order to reduce the climate change's impact on the transmission grids, can of course implement some measures to keep its system up and minimize outage and hasten system restoration basically. Here's a simple, a short list of potential climate adaptation measures. For instance, we could have mitigation measures, for instance, by doing forest management, rezoning land use, rezoning land use so that the infrastructure are less vulnerable, are in less vulnerable areas, basically. We could also have some grade hardening, basically making the infrastructure more stronger by building stronger towers, stronger wires that could, survive high wind, floods, and wildfires, fires, basically. And also, yes, we have some potentially as a potential adaptation to the climate. To the climate change also could be a smarter operation by better monitoring and controlling the grid, basically. So at the current stage, how do we consider this in the guidelines? Is that in the implementation guidelines, basically we give a guidance on how. Let's say we split the topic in two. On the one hand, having the climate adaptation measure themselves, which are going to lead to, let's say, increasing cost beared by the project promoters, and therefore cost, let's say, put in place to adapt to those climate changes. This is in the implementation guideline considered in the CAPEX, and also prompted in the submission platform, while project promoters who have, let's say, incurred some cost for adaptation to climate could potentially also share it as a percentage of their CAPEX in the submission platform, basically. So this is also a new thing compared to the previous version. And this is the first step that we want to take on this topic of climate adaptation measure. And a second step, then the idea would be to kind of evaluate basically the benefits stemming from this climate adaptation measure. This is the part on which we are still working. Hopefully we get some improvement in the future versions, of course, of the implementation guideline, but also of the CBA guideline. That's the hope. And yeah, pretty much, yeah, for the moment, we are mainly asking project promoters who have incurred some costs in climate adaptation to give those costs, and this would also help us kind of build some range and also create the knowledge on that aspect, basically. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this presentation. I don't know if there's further questions in the chat or something that wasn't super clear. We are at 12 p.m. sharp. Yes, so thank you all very much for attending this workshop. Very thankful to have more than 60, 70 people. I see here a few other comments. So I don't know if you've seen this also, Niels, but here we have if about OPEX, so TYNDP 2025 guidelines for applicants, broadcast promoters, promotion for warehouse projects, application criteria, and their handling. Page 34 defines certain operating costs. How does it relate to the methodology you're presenting today? The following costs are to be considered as OPEX expected annual maintenance cost and expected operation cost. I don't know if you saw that coming, but I think, yeah, you are. Actually, Mr. Bohaski, I think you outlined it well. So OPEX are generally mainly maintenance cost, operational cost. I don't know if I forget something.
So the costs for the OPEX and also the CAPEX, but the question now is on the OPEX, is defined in more detail in the CBA guideline itself. And what you currently not see, because we have updated this already now based on some comments that we have received earlier, is that we have implemented this climate adaptation measures under the project costs. And there we also give them additional information. And also for the OPEX, we have added some additional information. So I would like to ask you to check then the final version of the implementation guideline and also have a look at the CBA guideline on this topic. And
yeah, I think the other questions are more related to presentation and video and the recording. So yes, I will see how I can put this together and try to inform yes or project promoters, where you can find this video. I'll arrange it and of course get back to you on this. And yes, I think that's pretty much it. So thank you all again for attending the meeting. Thank you to the presenters of the drafting team CBA. And yes, I wish you all a good day.
Yep. Thank
Goodbye.
you. See you. Bye.